another example of a so-called member of the squad, AOC, once again demonstrating her Western chauvinism, her social chauvinism, which again, at best, she mediocrely supports, these progressive social programs like Medicare For All in the United States, free college, etc., even though she's not really doing much to get those passed right now that Biden's elected. But when it comes to foreign policy, she is absolutely abysmal, unfortunately. And again, that's not really surprising. I mean, frankly, it's just, the Republican and Democratic Party both support U.S. empire, both completely in favor of U.S. imperialism, and that definitely seems to extend to the so-called progressive members of Congress like AOC. So here she is being interviewed by Amy Goodman on Democracy Now!, talking about a potential U.S. invasion of Haiti, and she basically, it's just a huge word salad. She talks how it might be bad right now, especially, quote, without any sort of plan. Like, really? And this is like the best that we have supposedly in Congress, and she can't even unequivocally say no. What the fuck? No, we don't need to be invading Haiti. We don't need to be invading anywhere in the world. If we're going to be doing invading, we need to invade the United States because it is, in fact, a shithole country. Trump was right. There's shithole countries, but the United States is chief among them. Close down the 700 plus military bases. I think it's actually 800, 100 plus countries. Use that massive amount of money and resources to help people here. Maybe give them healthcare. Like Cuba has universal healthcare. We don't have that in the United States. Or obviously, give some of that money and funding to all of the countries and communities around the world who have been absolutely devastated by U.S. imperialism for, more or less since the founding of the, United States to a certain extent. So here it is. So this is from Dan Cohen. She won't outright reject it because her career ambitions are too great. I mean, it's like, I can't frankly think of any, so-called Democratic politician that is actually a staunch anti-imperialist. Again, she does this whole both side stuff when it comes to, the genocide of the Palestinian people by the Israeli apartheid state. She tried to equate Hamas, which again, under international law, the Palestinian people have at their disposal, they can use any means necessary to overthrow the occupying force, the Israeli government, the settler colonial state of Israel. They have every right to do, whatever they need to do to repel that occupying force. But politicians like AOC like to equate the two as somehow being similar. And now apparently she's okay with a invasion of Haiti as long as there's, a plan in place. I mean, Jesus Christ, this is the best that we can fucking do. Again, that is where political movements go to die is within the Democratic Party. Again, we're not seeing a whole lot of fucking difference, are we, with regards to U.S. imperialism under the Biden administration than we did under Trump, right? Still trying to extradite Julian Assange to the United States for the crime of being a fucking journalist and exposing the crimes of the U.S. empire. Still occupying Syria, a third of Syria, the oil and wheat producing region there. We're still sanctioning the fucking shit out of Iran, leading to, horrible fucked up shit there. Same thing with Syria, Venezuela, the embargo on Cuba, etc. And this is the fucking best that we can do. I mean, Jesus Christ. So here it is.
I think there are an enormous amount of concerns. I, first of all, applaud the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, but this is, the intention of that is to not relocate troops from Afghanistan to anywhere else. And I don't believe that that was the intention in withdrawal from the White House.
I mean, fuck, I wouldn't put it past fucking Biden. The motherfucker was a huge cheerleader for the war in Iraq. As Chomsky points out, the most disastrous foreign policy decision of the fucking 21st century.
But this situation is extraordinarily delicate.
So he's talking about Haiti.
Extremely fragile, and I do not believe right now that the introduction of U.S. troops without...
Right? So she doesn't think right now, but maybe in the future it would be okay to introduce troops to Haiti. Like, what in the fuck? And maybe in the future, maybe it'll be a right time as long as there's a plan. I mean, Jesus Christ. And this is a so-called progressive? Give me a fucking break.
Without any sort of plan.
Okay, let's just play that part again, so... Wait, I didn't go back far enough, did I? Alright, let's try that.
And I do not believe right now that the introduction of U.S. troops...
Right now,
without...
introduction of U.S. troops without... particularly any sort of plan.
Sets any community...
Career ambitions is right. I mean, what does she fucking want to run for president? She can't be seen as an anti-imperialist because she's, in fact, not. Like, again... You're not on the left if you're not an anti-imperialist. AOC is not on the left because she's not an anti-imperialist. She's a fucking lukewarm, center-right fucking politician. I mean, you can't even frankly call her a social or Western chauvinist at this point because she's not really even advocating for those fucking social programs at this time, is she? Jackson Hinkle, that deep dive YouTube channel person, he did a Twitter thread, and she's basically stopped talking about Medicare For All at this point, even though that was, she campaigned on it, but now that Biden's in office, well, don't have to talk about that anymore, right?
Yes, or whether it is Haitians up for success. I do believe that with the assassination, the people of Haiti and the country is in a very delicate moment.
And they do not... They do not need the United States fucking sending troops or trying to continue to interfere further in this country's political or economic process. Again, like, Haiti was the site of the only successful slave revolution in the world. They overthrew the French colonizers there, the French slave owners there. They kicked their ass, and they've been paying for that dearly ever since.
Should be in supporting a peaceful transition and a peaceful...
And how does that make fucking sense then? You're saying, you want to support a peaceful transition. How would potentially putting U.S. fucking troops there add to that? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Process for selecting a new leader and avoiding any sort of violence, but particularly in really...
But potentially putting U.S. troops there in the future will not add to the fucking violence. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, she obviously still believes in fucking American exceptionalism, and it's definitely shining through. Like, the United States is the biggest purveyor of fucking death and destruction in the world, and that's why it needs to be called out, and that's why U.S. imperialism needs to be called out for the fucking hugely destructive force that is all the time.
Supporting any due process for justice here in the United States for any actors that may have been complicit on U.S. soil.
I mean, Jesus Christ. And this is the best that we can fucking do in Congress? I mean, give me a fucking break. I know fucking... infants with more courage and moral integrity than AOC. Max Blumenthal. She sounds like Obama when they took his teleprompters away, but with the added burden of having to say something seemingly progressive. Again, she was trying to thread this needle by trying to sound like an anti-imperialist, but actually potentially saying, like, well, U.S. imperialism, we might need to send troops in the future. Pretty disgusting, right? AOC is the real grifter. And then, all right, already did that one. Oops. And then she's doing the same. Gotta go through it here. Danny Haifong, give him a follow. The Left Lens, really good YouTube channel. Check out his work at Black Agenda Report as well. AOC stumbles through this question on Haiti and essentially advocates neocolonialism by claiming U.S. should support Haiti in selecting a new leader. The only thing U.S. should be doing is getting out of Haiti. U.S. interventions or coups are the root of the crisis. Completely agree. But and then she was doing the same thing with Cuba, trying to it's like, both sides. We gotta, the U.S. needs to get rid of the embargo on Cuba. That's obviously not helping things. But then the Cuban government also needs to start respecting the press and the democratic process and people's right to free speech and all of that stuff. And I mean, I just think it's so freaking hypocritical. A U.S. politician talking about another country and saying how they need to become more democratic. Is the fucking U.S. democratic? I mean, Jesus Christ. The U.S. political system is completely bought and paid for by the capitalist class, by the military industrial complex. And then so here she is, both sides on Cuba. And again, she did this exact same thing during an interview, talking about Israel and Palestine and equating Hamas, trying to say they're as bad as the settler colonial regime of Israel, the apartheid fucking regime that's committing genocide, ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians. So again, this isn't that surprising, and I forgot who it was, but career ambitions.
Rise of everyday people in the island of Cuba.
The people that were actually protesting against the socialist government in Cuba were right-wing reactionaries, and the same thing with those all those Cubans in Miami, the anti-Cuban Cubans, the ones who want to see another US backed dictatorship installed on the island. So this, I mean, Jesus Christ.
Cubans, just everyday working class Cubans and Cubans all across
and she somehow thinks the working class people of Cuba don't want the socialist government in power. They would rather have a fucking oligarchy like we have in the fucking United States, where very, very small amount of people control, the political parties, reap all the benefits of the economic system while everybody else is fighting for scraps, massive amounts of, wealth and income inequality. For God's sakes, Cuba has universal health care. Cuba has the same life expectancy as the United States. They have a lower infant mortality rate. I believe they were sending healthcare workers to 40 countries during the pandemic. What has the U.S. been exporting during the pandemic? Death and destruction via bombs and fucking sanctions. But no, she's focusing on both sides in Cuba. I mean, again, give me a fucking break. This is the best we can do within the Democratic Party. It's very telling, isn't it? Like, this is where social movements go to die. There is no hope for the Democratic Party, and again, really shouldn't be focusing too much on electoral politics, because I mean, what are the fucking options at this point? It's fucking shit.
And standing up for their rights and standing up for to protest the intolerable.
So again, this is basically, she's parodying like right wing conservative liberal talking points at this point, and then
conditions that have been happening on the island. This includes everything from the desperate lack of medical supplies and
the desperate lack of medical supplies to the extent that exists in Cuba is a direct result of the fucking U.S. embargo. So you do not need to be focusing on the Cuban government. You need to be focusing on your government. Full fucking stop. I mean, Jesus Christ. What do you think you actually have more control over? You're, a politician in the imperial core who's been trying to strangle to death and, assassinate the leaders of Cuba, so many different regime change efforts over the years. Maybe focus on the 60-year embargo, getting rid of that, instead of what Cuba should be doing differently as you fucking sit comfortable in the imperial core collecting your close to $200K a year and all these great benefits. Maybe fighting to get people in the United States universal health care like they have in Cuba. Maybe, I mean, again, it's completely misdirected.
Key, whether it's medical supplies, food, or other key materials.
I mean, and again, think about how much better Cuba and the Cuban people would be doing right now if this embargo wasn't in place. Again, they have universal health care. They export doctors all around the world. They have a lower infant mortality rate than the United States. They have the same life expectancy, all the while battling this 60-year embargo that has made life a lot more difficult. Focus on that if you actually care about the Cuban people. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Throughout the island, particularly exacerbated during the pandemic. During the pandemic. I apologize. Sorry about that. So they are protesting the lack of materials during the
the protests that she's actually been talking about have been maybe in the hundreds of people. The pro-government protests have been in the thousands, in the tens of thousands, people coming out in support of the socialist government, of the Cuban revolutionary government, because they see, no, we don't want to become another fucking US-backed dictatorship like they had previous to the Cuban Revolution under the Batista regime. I mean, what the fuck, dude?
Particularly the lack of medical supplies and other.
Again, that is a direct result of the fucking U.S. embargo.
And so one of the things that we're trying to accomplish, and one of the things that we want to make sure that we communicate, is our solidarity with the Cuban people.
And that, what she's doing right now is not showing solidarity to the freaking Cuban people. She's showing solidarity to the fucking U.S. empire and their regime change efforts and adding more fuel to that fucking fire. Again, like,
have requested international solidarity with their movement, and we stand in strong solidarity. And one of the things that's important for us to discuss is some of the contributing factors into this situation.
Again, the only factor she needs to be focusing on is the role of the fucking U.S. empire.
One thing that we must unequivocally condemn are anti-democratic actions on behalf of the Diaz-Canel administration. And we want to make extremely clear that suppression of the freedom of the press and
Lol. Talking about the suppression of the freedom of the press, like we have a free press in the United States. The fucking corporate media is completely beholden to their wealthy shareholders, completely just sycophants, for the White House, just stenographers for the State Department. Again, like, you're talking about a free press when the United States is trying to extradite Julian Assange for the crime of journalism. Focus on that shit. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Of protest and the suppression of freedom of speech is unacceptable and runs
contrary. What? I mean, is it this one? Maybe focus on the shit that's actually happening in your own country. LAPD shot a clearly marked medic at 10 feet with a less lethal round today. Welcome to the Los Angeles 2021 LGBTQ human rights movement. Feels like society has taken a step back 20 years. And then you have also in, Los Angeles, that person said, was telling the cops to not shoot them, shot them, I think, in the fucking face with a less lethal round. Maybe focus on the shit your government is doing and not shit that's actually not even really going on to the extent that you claim it is.
To our democratic values.
Our democratic she's trying to claim that the United States is a democracy. The United States has never been a fucking democracy. It was founded by a bunch of slave-owning, white supremacist, rich, land-owning assholes. It's never been a fucking... I mean, Jesus Christ. Let's call a fucking spade here. The United States is in no way a democracy. What in the fuck? How is it a democracy when the politician with the most money will more than likely get elected? How is it democracy when corporations and these special interest groups are able to spend unlimited amounts of money to get their politicians or their ballot initiatives passed? How is it a democracy when you only have two corporate-backed, militaristic, imperialistic, capitalist, white supremacist parties to vote for? Cuba is much more of a democracy than the United States has ever been.
We call on the Diaz-Canel administration to treat all protesters and to condemn any police violence and to reverse.
Again, the United States has the world's fucking biggest prison population. We see night after night, day after day, cops brutalizing, killing. I saw a freaking clip last week on social media. Cops brutalizing this black person, naturally, because just the racist white supremacist nature of policing. In New York, they were, violently taking him off the subway there for supposedly not paying the $3 or $4 fare. Yet he had, and again, that's even if they hadn't paid that. Look at that. Look at what's going on in your own fucking country. Don't be literally. It's just projecting all of the fucked up shit that exists in the United States onto places like Cuba, which again, a lot more fucking democratic than the United States.
Any and all policies of that. Now, the other piece of this,
but the other piece, you have both sides in it.
And what's extraordinarily important for us to communicate as well is the actions in U.S.
But again, that is literally the only piece of this that she should be focusing on. But instead, she makes this very long-winded speech about all undemocratic stuff, freedom of speech, targeting the press, yada yada yada, and then at the end, well, the U.S. we got to focus on that too. Sorry, I just can't take any more of that shit. And then again, she is a Western chauvinist. She's a social chauvinist at best. But again, we don't even see her fighting for these really policies anymore, whether it be Medicare for All, free college, canceling student loan debt, etc. Here we go from 2019. AO says she follows Democratic leadership on issue of U.S. intervention in Venezuela. Again, she's not on the left because she's not an anti-imperialist, and frankly that has been quite clear for a number of years. And again, I think it's important to call these things out because this is supposedly the best that we got right now in Congress or other members of the squad, and yet they're not even anti-imperialist. Again, AOC at best is a Western chauvinist, but it seems like since Biden's got in office, and maybe even before that, frankly, she's not really fighting for the things that she claims to support, like Medicare for All. So let's just see when look. Can confirm LAPD fractured the bones in my right hand with a double-handed baton swing at my camera hand. My camera phone flew away and was also damaged. We'll post x-rays once I leave urgent care. Looking at 6 weeks recovery, possible physical therapy afterwards. Where's her condemnation of this? Why is she not focusing on this? Jesus. And then look, yes, look. They don't know. The U.S. that the U.S. is operating over 800 foreign military bases, while the rest of the world's countries are operating around 30 combined. Russia is scary. China is bad. Or now she's, saying all these bad things are happening in Cuba. Jesus Christ. Okay, what was it gonna? It's gonna search. AOC. And yeah, of course you have fucking liberal hacks like John Oliver, AOC, Medicare for... Oh, when's the last time she tweeted about this? It doesn't seem like she's tweeted anything recently, right? And then I guess there's like a Medicare For All march. They schedule it the same day as the thing for Nina Turner. Look at that. The left's curious silence about the Medicare For All demonstrations in 40 other cities. But she hasn't talked about it. Again, she's not even a very good social chauvinist as of late, right? Bernie not talking about it. AOC. I mean, again, like that, you get all of these people in DC, these 40, cities across the country, rallying, campaigning, protesting for Medicare for All. Like that's going to move the needle a little bit. That's going to generate some more momentum. Maybe put some pressure on these fucking politicians. DSA. The national DSA is fucking trash, frankly. Some of the local chapters are doing good work, have some good people in them, but again, the national chapter decided not to come out in support of Force the Vote, while I think their membership was overwhelmingly in favor of it. The inaction poses a serious question for DSA. Will it become simply a lobby group attached to the Democratic Party? Or will it become a socialist org that represents and actually fights for it? All right, enough of this. AOC is trash. If you have extra money to donate to something, find a good, maybe nonprofit in your community, get involved with some mutual aid work, actually support, leftist, anti-imperialist voices that call out this type of bullshit, whether that's the Left Lens, Mint Press News, The Gray Zone, Black Agenda Report, Richard Medhurst, the Electronic Intifada are all good places to start. Like the video if you like the damn video, subscribe for my content. Peace. Much love. All part of